Welcome to the 15th International Writing Across the Curriculum Conference. I'm going to walk through some introductory remarks and say some thanks and things like that. But the first thing I want to do is start out by apologizing, because I really regret the fact that you're not here on campus at CSU in Colorado. It's beautiful out here, although we do have an awful lot of smoke from the fires, but it's still a beautiful place. And so I thought I'd share some pictures just to give you a sense of place, and so I could remember what it might have been like if we were actually together in person. So here's a picture of our campus looking out towards the foothills. That's the Student Recreation Center on the right, and we've got dorms on the left, and we have a few mountains to look at. So the mountains are kind of hidden behind the foothills. Those are about 8,000 feet right there. This is a picture of our oval on campus. We have an older part of campus, and it has these American elms, which you don't see too many of those anymore, but we have a wonderful forestry program, and they've preserved these elms, and it's pretty amazing to walk through there. It's just a beautiful space. But COVID, and so we couldn't get together. So I thought I would share maybe a couple of pictures of what you might have seen if you were going over, say, Trail Ridge Road and Rocky Mountain National Park. So I took a motorcycle trip this summer, or this June, and this is what I was seeing. Some of the new growth coming out just in the lower meadows here, looking up, and there was a little bit of snow. Most of that is gone now, but there's still plenty of snow out there, and you can see it, when I look out my front door towards the mountains. And this is what the Never Summer Range looks like. And I love that name. It's probably the most poetic name I've heard for a mountain range, and I just love it. So there are probably better names out there, but this one I'm particularly fond of. And this is looking from we're about 12,000 feet here, looking out towards the west. So I wish we could all been here together. This would have been fun. But with that in mind, I want to say some words of thanks. And first of all, I just want to thank you for joining us at the conference. I think we've really got a great turnout. There've been a lot of people that have signed up. I know it's difficult with Zoom. It's not quite the same, but hopefully, we'll have a great conference nonetheless, and it will be an enduring conference. I want to thank all 272 of our speakers. You guys really are bringing a lot to this conference. You're what makes it work, that and the interaction between you and the people that are coming to your sessions. So I'm really excited about seeing what you guys have done, and I really appreciate your willingness to share your work with us. I also want to say some thanks to our advisory board. We had 39 people who came together early on when we were still planning the conference. Back in 2017, or sorry, in 2019, people joined the group and we started working together, and they helped develop the conference theme. We had some great discussions, I thought, about what the conference theme should be, how we can turn it into something that would be both a celebration of what's happened and looking forward, taking stock, trying to get a sense of where we're going to go as a community. And the folks in this list, I just really appreciate all the good ideas that you guys have shared and the hard work you did. You guys reviewed proposals, you publicized the conference, you shared ideas. I really appreciate the work that you all did. I also want to thank our sponsors. Bedford St. Martin's and Power Notes provided funding that helped support 35 grants for folks who for registration. And I think that was a wonderful thing. Power Notes is also giving out for a year's use of their Power Note software, which is pretty good. And Bedford St. Martin's gives out so much in terms of professional development resources that they're really a great partner. At Colorado State University, we've received significant support from the Office of the Provost, from the College of Liberal Arts, and I really appreciate what Liberal Arts has done to support us. They've really been a major contributor to this conference. The College of Natural Sciences, another strong contributor, and really appreciate that. And the Department of English has just been wonderful. They have helped us with everything from dealing with expenses and handling invoices to providing access to some of our best grad students to help us with the conference. And so I really appreciate that. So WAC Clearinghouse has been a sponsor of the program of the conference, as has WAC Go, the WAC graduate organization, and appreciate the work that they've done as well. I really want to thank the IWAC conference team. So there's a group of people that have been past directors of the conference. I could list them all, but it's a huge number of people. But in particular, Joan Mullen has been extremely helpful, Pamela Flash, Michael Pemberton. Those three really stand out among this group for the work that they've done, and I've appreciated all the work that they've done. So it's really great to see this. And of course, the folks at Auburn have been wonderful in terms of supporting all the work we did. There's actually, it's really kind of interesting. This group was running independently, and it would just pass on from one school to the next, from one person to the next. And it was a self-supporting kind of journey. But there was no institutional affiliation beyond any given conference, and sometimes it was difficult to figure out how do we transfer funds. When the Association for Writing Across the Curriculum was founded, this group voted to affiliate with the association, and I think it has been a really good situation with that. And you can read a lot about how this group came together and the things they've done over time. Marty Townsend had a really nice opening chapter in the IWAC conference collection that came out of 2018 at Auburn, and so you can go to that and take a look at it. It's really well written and really a good chapter. And I think I'm really excited about the people I've been working with at the on the conference. Caleb Gonzalez was the first person who I started working with, an English graduate student in our MFA program, focusing on nonfiction. Annie Halseth and Jesse McLain are students that I've had in my classes, and I've really enjoyed the opportunity to work with them. And they're both in our rhetoric, writing, and social change program, as was Matthew Norwood Klingstead, who was with us for the first year and just did a wonderful job. And we brought in Al Powell, who is really an excellent video person, and he's been helping us incredibly with that. And Michael Todd has joined us recently, and he's another graduate student also in the MFA program in creative nonfiction, and he's just doing a wonderful job. So really appreciate these guys. I mean, honestly, without them, as Chris Anson said, I would be getting even less sleep, and I think it's been great to work with them. So thank you, guys. At this point, I'd like to show the Colorado State University land acknowledgement, and Annie Halseth is going to play a video of that. So I'll stop sharing and we'll walk through that. So I apologize for the lack of video. We've been trying to work that out, and we thought we had it working yesterday, but it really is a beautiful video. And even without the sound, I think you could read the closed captions, but it's worth taking a look at. They did a wonderful job on it. So I want to bring in Ann Blakesley, who's the current chair of the Association for Writing Across the Curriculum. And Anne, could you just start saying a few words while we take a look at this?
All right. Thanks, Mike. And hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Anne Blakesley, and I am the current chair of the Association for Writing Across the Curriculum. I'm also the director of Campus and Community Writing and the Writing Across the Curriculum program at Eastern Michigan University. The IWAC conference has functioned for many years now to bring all of us together as a community of scholars and practitioners. This conference has served a vital role, providing us with a significant forum for our work, and the sessions at this conference attest to the incredible quality of that work. Cultivating community among us and promoting the growth of our profession along with the reach and impact of the work we all do. And now this conference, through the unanimous decision of the recent conference directors, which Mike mentioned, has come under the umbrella of the new Association for Writing Across the Curriculum. About 5 years ago, with the incredible leadership of many, let me call them visionary WAC scholars and professionals, AWAC was conceptualized to give all of us a professional home. I am honored to serve as this year's chair of AWAC and want to express gratitude to the association's previous and inaugural chairs, Jeff Galen, Michelle Cox, and Stacy Sheriff. I also want to mention and express gratitude to AWAC Treasurer Lori Britt-Smith and Secretary Justin Rademakers, and to everyone, and there are many of you, who have or are serving as members at large and or committee chairs and committee members. The committees of AWAC are a significant part of the leadership structure of this new organization, and IWAC is now one of these committees. AWAC is proud to be associated with this long-running conference, and we look forward to the future and to our continued growth and good work together. I want to end my comments by sharing a statement on the AWAC homepage, which expresses, I think, the core values of both the association and also this conference. I quote, "The Association for Writing Across the Curriculum, AWAC, promotes writing instruction and education across all contexts for teachers, teacher scholars, writing center directors, writing program leaders, administrators, and graduate and undergraduate students. Our goal is to impact productively writing and writing instruction in meaningful, inclusive, and actionable ways." I look forward to interacting with all of you this week as we learn, contemplate, and reflect together on our professional work and on ways to make that work meaningful, inclusive, and actionable. The AWAC Executive Board wishes to express its gratitude to Mike and to all the members of his team for their dedication, persistence, resilience, and sheer grit in making this conference a reality for us in these challenging times. Thank you, Mike, and all of you. And everyone, enjoy the conference. If you are not yet a member of AWAC, please consider joining and also becoming involved with one of our committees. You can visit wacassociation.org for more information. Thank you.
Thanks, Anne. That's really good. I certainly encourage everybody to join AWAC. It's a great organization. The dues are relatively low. Actually, they're low. And if you're a graduate student, there are scholarships available that will allow you to join without any cost at all. So I hope that you'll all consider joining. So I want to talk a little bit about the conference, and then we're going to move into our opening plenary talk. The theme of the conference is celebrating successes, recognizing challenges, inviting critique and innovation. And as I had mentioned earlier, this came out of an extensive discussion, a long-running discussion about what should our theme be. And we really focused on the wide range of activities that are encompassed under WAC. And so we came up with a number of things, and you can see the various areas that we developed under this overarching umbrella of success, challenge, and critique. And and certainly innovation. In the conference, on the agenda in the conference, you'll see different colored tags that say these things. So if you're particularly interested in, say, the role of WAC in addressing social justice or WAC as an educational movement, you can look for sessions that have those colors or those colored buttons in the agenda, and you can start adding them to your personal agenda. And I think that'll work out great. So anyway, as I said, we had a lot of proposals, and we were able to put together a really strong program as a result of all the proposals we received. We're going to have 3 plenary sessions. This one where Chris Thaiss and Carol Rutz are talking about WAC Fearlessness, Sustainability, and Adaptability Over 5 Decades. We're going to have the WAC Awards on Wednesday, and then we're going to have a really interactive session WAC at 50, Where Are We Now by Pamela Flash and Teresa Red. And I think they've been working really hard on this, and I know it's going to be really exciting. And then we're going to have our closing plenary session on Friday, and that'll be the last event of the conference. We're going to announce the 16th IWAC conference host, and then Al Harahap, Federico Navarro, and Elisa Russell are going to look forward for us. They're going to call Writing Across More Than the Curriculum, a conversation toward diversifying, professionalizing, and renovating WAC. And I think that's going to be exciting as well. So I'm really looking forward to our 3 sessions today and or this week, and especially the one today, which I know Chris Thaiss and Carol Rutz have worked so hard on. So very much looking forward to that. We are recording our sessions. Once the video editing is complete, we will add them to the session. We'll edit the closed captions as soon as possible. They're probably not going to be perfect, as soon as we get them on during the conference, because there's going to be an awful lot of sessions to edit, but we'll do our best. And then we're going to have a collection of papers based on the conference that will come out as a collection. And it's going to be published by the WAC Clearinghouse Perspectives on Writing series, probably in 2022. The proceedings editors, the collection editors, are asking for submissions of proposals by October 1st, 2021. And you can send them questions at this address, iwac2020collection@gmail.com. So Jill Dahlman, Heather Falconer, Megan Kelly, and Caleb Gonzalez are the editors of this collection, and they're going to be doing a roundtable presentation tomorrow, the first session tomorrow, session C3. So if you'd like to learn more about the conference proceedings, please take a look at that. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to turn things over to Jessie McLain, who, as I mentioned before, is one of the conference associate directors and a graduate student at Colorado State University, and she is going to introduce our speakers.
Thank you so much, Mike. I think I need to begin first by thanking Mike for everything that he's done. I think it's clear that that we would all certainly not be here today if it wasn't for Mike. And I don't know what your inboxes have looked like lately, but I can't even imagine what his has looked like lately. So we've all made it, and happy to be here. And Mike, I wanted to thank you on behalf of the whole team. And hello to all of you out there in Zoom and Whova land. As Mike mentioned, my name is Jessie McLain, and I am one of the associate directors for this year's conference. In that role, I've had the privilege of working with many of you via email. I'm excited to work with you not in person, but as close as we can get this week virtually. And if you need me for anything, you should have all of my information and can contact me at any time. I also have the privilege of introducing today's 2 speakers. I'm going to start with Chris Thaiss, and since he can't be here today, we'll hear a brief message from him recorded, and then I will introduce Carol, and she will wrap it up with her live remarks. So I'll go ahead and get started. Chris Thaiss, as many of you know, is one of the founding leaders of the IWAC movement. He was doing workshops long before many people even knew what WAC was. He's been, in addition to that, he's been key in linking the K-12 movement to IWAC as it is now, and has just bridged all of those really important gaps. So thank you to Chris for all that he has done for this effort over the years. This is where I check my notes just to make sure I haven't forgotten anything. As his biography within the program establishes, he is Professor Emeritus of Writing at UC Davis, where he served as the first permanent director of their writing center. He is also directed their Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning and coordinated the cross-disciplinary first-year seminar program. He chaired the PhD emphasis in writing rhetoric and composition studies until 2016, active in developing WAC programs since 1978. He coordinated the international network of WAC programs from 2005 till 2015. He is a member of the International Collaborations Committee of the Association for Writing Across the Curriculum and works on the editorial board for the WAC Clearinghouse. Until 2006, he taught at George Mason University, where he directed the composition and WAC programs and the University Writing Center. He also served as the chair of the English department while he was there. In 2005, Chris received the University David King Award for career contributions to teaching excellence. he has written, co-written, or edited 14 books, the newest of which is Writing Science in the 21st Century, based on his years of writing to STEM majors at UC Davis, and has just published a 4th edition of A Short History of Writing Instruction, which was co-edited by James J. Murphy. Obviously, the list of accolades goes on from there, but now I will turn it over so we can hear a brief word from Chris.
Carol and I feel honored to have been asked to give the opening plenary of this wonderful conference, which has been so long in the making and which has handled creatively the changes necessitated by our need to stay safe during the pandemic. We offer our thanks to the inimitable Mike Palmquist and to all the members of the team who have made this event possible. I also offer my apologies for not being present for this moment, which I must miss because of family health reasons. While Carol will be here to answer your questions after our talks, you can reach me, as always, by my UC Davis email or leave questions for me in the chat. 5 decades. Carol and I are giving this plenary not only because we can talk about the early days of WAC, but because both of our wacky careers span the 5 decades from the 70s through the 20-teens. We can talk about the 3 WAC ideals of fearlessness, sustainability, and adaptability because we've lived them in our careers as teachers, writers, and program planners and administrators. Of course, we've been extremely fortunate to have had the opportunity to work for many years at our institutions and to reach funded retirements that give us the freedom to reflect on those decades of WAC work and to keep contributing to WAC as we choose, while also going down new career paths. We are very thankful for that every day. Principle 1, fearlessness. Teaching well always requires fearlessness. It requires honesty, compassion, so many hours per week, and the will to ask tough questions of ourselves, of our students, and of those to whom we report. It calls for imagination, taking chances with new ideas and risking failure. WAC fearlessness has always meant breaking through the thick walls of the silos of academia, challenging the comfort of those who have grown complacent with their assumptions about students and their potential, assumptions about who can learn and who can't. WAC fearlessness challenges the complacent walls of disciplinary jargons and people's unwillingness to learn to speak a language, even create a language that others can understand. For those who want to build a WAC culture where they teach, fearlessness means having many awkward conversations with administrators and chairs already burdened by time and money woes. It means acknowledging our own ignorance of others' expertise and listening to, and to keep listening to, and learning from people across an institution whose views on students and the goals of education may differ from one's own. WAC fearlessness always means asking others to come out of their own comfort zones, even as we must do the same. And if you do WAC for many years, fearlessness means learning to look forward to yet another opportunity to address the same concerns and answer the same questions that people have been asking you all those years. Why can't my students write? Why doesn't the English department/writing program do its job? How can I add writing to my teaching when I have so much material to cover? We already fund composition courses. Why do we need to fund WAC? In my own life, as I look back on when I began to get these wacky notions in about 1975, when my young family and I were struggling at the poverty line, I can't really account for why I became so enamored of the idea that students should be writing and learning through writing in all their subjects, not just in the first year composition course sections, like those that I had been hired to teach part-time at 2 young colleges in the DC area, George Mason University, only 4 years old, and Northern Virginia Community College. In fact, so enamored of this idea was I that I eschewed the path that was conventional for college teachers in those days, teaching and writing about literature, in order to badger my colleagues and department chairs about this new thing, writing and learning across the curriculum, that a handful of US and British scholars were writing about. I guess you could call my stance fearless, meaning I was too dumb and young to know that I should be afraid of dooming my career chances before I even knew that I might have a career. Nevertheless, those visionary scholar, writers, teachers who were conceptualizing writing and learning across the curriculum, people like James Britton and Nancy Martin in the UK and Janet Emming in the US, were so eloquent and persistent that they inspired a bunch of youngsters like me to put on a nervous air of confidence about, damn it, maybe making a career out of teaching writing, and maybe even writing articles about it, and maybe even cajoling faculty in other departments to take a hand in their own students' writing education. I remember a conversation with the English chair at George Mason in 1976, who was listening skeptically to my plans and saying sympathetically, well, I guess there might be a few places where you could make a career out of teaching comp. But clearly, he implied, not there or at any place he had heard of. But what I'm not telling you is that I was abetted in my crazy ideas by a growing cluster of college, high school, and elementary school teachers across the US who formed the nucleus of what was first called the Bay Area Writing Project in 1974, and then became the National Writing Project in 1977, when James Gray, Mary Ann Smith, Carol Tateishi, and others were able to secure funding from the new US Department of Education to form new sites. By 1976, there were 14 sites in 6 states, and that was just the beginning. I was so fortunate to be mentored at George Mason by Donald Galair, who founded the Writing Project site there in 1977, and who gave me the chance to work with him and thus meet and be inspired by the K-12 teachers who came to our first summer institute in 1978. I cannot assert too strongly how that growing collective of teachers from across grade levels and states gave young people like me the fearlessness to do the unthinkable, transgress those borders of school cultures and disciplines in order to learn from one another, and then, audaciously, to begin building efforts in each of our schools to provide a home for other teachers who saw writing not as a rule-bound barrier that only a few could scale, but as an avenue, a gift for more students to learn and grow and succeed. I want to share with you a photo from one of those early institutes. This is in 1980. This is Ken McCrory, who visited the GMU Faculty Writing Program, which was the name we gave to our WAC program, and the Northern Virginia Writing Project. Here is Ken, listening wisely to our conversations. And back in the background here, that's me. That's what I looked like in those days. Principle 2, sustainability. Though the term sustainability was still years away from becoming a buzzword in economics, in systems design, and in WAC, thanks to Michelle Cox, Jeff Galen, and Dan Melzer, the idea of sustaining what we started in the 70s was always foremost in the minds of those of us who were initiating WAC in the late 70s and early 80s. One key towards sustainability was having the National Writing Project Network, and thus the ongoing invitation to talk to other folks over the phone and at conferences about what we were doing. No internet yet, some of you might remember. Beginning in 1981, we also had the National WAC Network that a few of us founded and that held semi-annual open meetings at both 4Cs and until 1985 at NCTE. The idea for this network came out of the annual workshops of the National Writing Project that were always held the day before the NCTE Fall Convention. A number of program newsletters also sprang up, and if we wanted to, we could get on those mailing lists. And starting in 1982, A few article collections and books on WAC programs began to emerge. Bit by bit, a research literature began to grow. And I want to share with you another PowerPoint here. This is the very first issue of our newsletter from the GMU Faculty Writing Program, November 1980. Writing, Practices in Faculty Writing and in Writing Across the Curriculum. And you can see how fancy this was and how well put together. The very fact of these new small networks gave people a big incentive to keep going, despite the chronic problems with funding of any kind, the ongoing resistance of administrators and faculty, and being told regularly that there could be no future in this writing thing. I could talk on the phone with Barbara Walvert at Loyola in Baltimore, or Toby Fulweiler and Art Young at Michigan Tech, or Janet Emick in New Jersey, or Elaine Maiman in Pennsylvania, and they would always be an inspiration. Another sustainability tactic that emerged, and that we used at George Mason, was to group initiatives that had some goals in common. So the composition courses, the Small But Growing Writing Center, the WAC workshops, and the Northern Virginia Writing Project, all still very young, shared a joint leadership team. In key ways, the successes of each of these ventures depended on the success of them all, and vice versa. To cite one example of this collaboration, when we started WAC workshops for Mason faculty in 1978, we asked high school teacher consultants from the Writing Project to run some of the workshops, since they had greater expertise and on-the-job experience than anyone on our campus. Meanwhile, I was coordinating in-service courses for the Writing Project at local high schools, and at the same time directing both the composition courses at Mason and its small writing center, which we first called the Writing Lab in 1976, and then the Writing Place later on, because the tutors and I thought it sounded cooler. Please remember, this was before there was a research literature on writing program design and management, and years before there were graduate programs in writing studies, not to mention anything like the independent writing programs for undergraduates. This fully collaborative model worked fine to get each of these efforts going and build some credibility, enough to inspire other folks to want to join the teams and take on leadership, and to give the university administration enough confidence to fork over money for release time for the directors. In 1979, I had one course release total for administering both Comp and the Writing Center. But by 1985, 6 years in, each of the four entities had separate directors, all minimally compensated for their time, but all dedicated to growing each entity and collaborating with the others. Now, a third key component of sustainability, and maybe the most important, was the goal of bringing more and more people into leadership roles, whether as steering committee members, consultants, editors, contributing writers, or some other structure. For example, we always made writing and local publication a key part of our workshops and institutes as a way for more people to get recognition. And I want to share with you, let's see. This is the first anthology of in-house articles from the Northern Virginia Writing Project, 1979. You notice the very fancy spiral binding and the very fancy design. Another sustainability component, built-in continuity. It's not a bad idea for directors to make it known that they'll only do a job for a certain length of time, so others will be thinking about continuity and the role that they might play in it. It also inspires the director to be cultivating successors and to encourage newer members of a team to develop and bring forth their own ideas. The organization is always more important than any one person. I've always thought that administratively it's dangerous to let anyone believe that an individual leader is indispensable. The myth of indispensability can lead directors to see others as rivals, not as teammates, and it can lead to the death of the program once the leader eventually and inevitably steps aside. Now moving on to principle 3, adaptability. I'll put it bluntly, there is no sustainability without adaptability. Times change, leading ideas change, finances change, technologies change, people change, access to opportunity changes, climates change, and on and on. Writing has changed utterly from the 1970s until now. And there are departments and degrees and curricular initiatives now that would never have been imagined 30 or 20 or even 10 years ago. So of course, WAC has had to change. Sometimes the changes come quickly and adaptation has to come quickly. In 1978, we ran the first WAC workshops. In 1980, we got a state grant to set up a Virginia state WAC network. In 1982, the whole Mason writing curriculum changed by dropping the second first-year writing course and adding required WID courses in the junior year that we had to develop. In 1984, first-year students could opt for an entirely cross-disciplinary curriculum called PAGE, the Plan for Alternative General Education, which had total WAC with no first-year writing course. By the late 80s, 10 years into our program at Mason, email, which we could never have imagined in 1976, was everywhere. And even these things called websites, think of it, were beginning to be developed. In 1991, the Faculty Senate demanded writing intensive courses, another new challenge, and on and on. In 1978, how silly we'd have been to imagine that we could know what a sustainable program was. Without the will to adapt, WAC and no program can keep going. Continually, the people invested in an idea must be alert for change, should even lead change, and must be ready to respond to change. Even just 2 years ago, who could have imagined how what we mean by writing and what we mean by teaching could have changed so much because of a virus? And even last year at this time, who could have imagined the ways that teachers and students would have adapted to, much less foreseen, the social justice, political, and technological changes that have brought about new challenges for adaptation? Just 9 months ago, I was into my 4th year of a busy retirement, 4 years removed from undergrad teaching, and 1 year removed from advising my last PhD student. Then I was asked to teach again my favorite undergrad course, Writing in Science, and to do so asynchronously online for the first time ever in my career, using the learning management system, Canvas, that UC Davis adopted just after I had retired. Fortunately, even with only 1 month's lead time, I could adapt and even love the challenge, but only because the writing program and the entire university had been so quick in adapting to the pandemic challenge and creating help services for newbies like me. And if our teaching and program management have to be ready for change, so must our research. For example, the International WAC WID Mapping Project, which began in 2005, revised survey-based research that Susan McLeod had begun with Susan Shirley back in 1987, and which she revised in 1997 with Eric Moralia. The survey design for US programs that PhD student Tara Porter and I announced in 2006 captured changes in WAC since 1997 that were now relevant in the first decade of the new millennium. But that research has gone on and changed since, based on further changes in design, theory, and objectives. This Wednesday at IWAC, my Davis colleague Kendon Kurzer with Catherine O'Meara, Greer Murphy, and Robin Russo, will be presenting on a new interactive re-envisioning of the mapping project research, which they have named the Writing Sites Project. And then on Friday, Michelle Zignoni of Northwestern University will present the current results of the latest revision of the US WAC survey, which began in 2015 and which continues to accept survey responses today. These iterations of this research are described on the WACWID Mapping Project website, mappingproject.ucdavis.edu. So, in closing, those of us who have given years to WAC have always been asking and must continue to ask, what of any paradigm is worth holding onto, and what of the new should be adopted and adapted? If we don't adapt fearlessly and we hope sustainably, we might find ourselves, I don't know, denying climate change, and maybe even thinking that retirement means not continuing to work creatively. But if we do accept that challenge, goodness knows what new adventures await WAC and its fearless leaders. Thanks to all of you for being present and for the fearless work that you do. I look forward to your questions. And now, on to Carol.
Gosh, what a great talk that was. That's the first time I've seen it all the way through, and you can tell how Chris has earned his reputation. So when he watches this later, I just want to be clear that we're so thankful to have had him and to have that talk. You know, when he says the fearlessness to do the unthinkable, a gift for more students to grow and succeed, more words, you know, truer words have probably never been spoken. And in that light, I am lucky to be able to turn it over or to talk about Carol now. Carol Rutz, according to Mike, was very surprised to receive her invitation to be a plenary speaker because, as far as I know, Mike's undergraduate institution, which was St. Olaf College, is a main rival of Carol's, which is Carrollton College. I know throughout this process and learning about Carol, I have learned, I think, the name of every single undergraduate and graduate institution in the state of Minnesota. There is a very extensive record of wonderful institutions. On another note, in Carol's lineage was actually her father was Jessica Palmquist's biology teacher in undergrad and her favorite instructor throughout her undergraduate career, as far as I understand. Carol, this is another time when I check my notes to make sure I haven't forgotten anything, concentrated her education in Minnesota, as I just mentioned. She has a BA in English, an MA in liberal studies, and a PhD with a Rec Comp specialty from the University of Minnesota. She has served Carrollton College for over 20 years as their director of the writing program, which involved teaching writing courses, providing faculty development in a WAC context, and writing assessment. Her research interests include her response to student writing, WAC pedagogy, writing assessment, and assessment of faculty development. She has served on the board of both 4Cs and the WPA, in addition to a 16-year series of interviews of WAC luminaries for the WAC Journal, soon to be republished by the WAC Clearinghouse as a collection, actually. She has published in numerous journals, including 3Cs, WPA, Assessing Writing, Numeracy, Composition Studies, Change, and Peer Review. Provided a batch of book chapters, and most recently co-authored with Bill Condon and others, Faculty Development and Student Learning. Another one, the credentials are just unmatched in certain ways, and I am so excited to be able to turn it over to Carol for her live talk.
Thank you, Jessie, and thank you, Mike, for providing a little documentation about my personal history. I need to start by saying I'm really honored to be paired with Chris Thaiss for this plenary, and I look forward to attempting to field questions afterward. As you've just heard, Chris presents a marvelous longitudinal view of WAC from the perspective of an early and ongoing participant. I should admit up front that Chris grants me a longer tenure as a WAC scholar than I deserve, While he was indeed doing WAC in the 1970s, WAC was a feature at Carleton College at that time, but well before I was on the scene. The story I offer is more of a case study of a place that stumbled into WAC for local reasons and has since taken on some status as an early adopter. As much as our field, rhetoric and composition, has striven to establish itself as a full member of the humanities writ large, our history is spotty. This summer's conference provides a chance to dip into the history of WAC as well as its current manifestations, mindful of the protean nature of the beast, illustrated by three key terms we have agreed to feature, which you've already heard a lot about from Chris: fearlessness, sustainability, and adaptability. Harriet Sheridan's story of, quote, teaching writing extraterritorially, unquote, provides an ideal example for our rubric of fearlessness. She used that title for a 1979 piece in ADE. She had been a fixture in Carleton's English department for many years when she was promoted to the Dean of College during the presidency of Howard Swearer. Later, after Swearer assumed the presidency at Brown University and Sheridan had served as Carleton's interim president for a year, she followed him to Brown. Those of you familiar with the Sheridan Center for Teaching and Learning at Brown know that it's named in her honor. Harriet Sheridan was a powerhouse. And if I don't mess this up as badly as I fear, I'm gonna try to show you a photo of her. Is this working? Maybe not. Let's see. Well, sorry, I tried. Okay, as you were. All right, now. The photo I got from the Carleton archives, which I'll send along to Mike if there's a way to insert it in the recording, has a photo of her from the 70s. Back to Carleton in the 70s. The college's catalog listed a writing requirement for graduation at least since 1960. The requirement began as a 2-course sequence, was shortened over the years to 1 course, and after that to a half course, a 5-week course, half of one of Carleton's 10-week terms. Sheridan was in a position to observe these transitions as an instructor and a dean. She faced irrefutable data showing that the courses, even the 5-week version, were not particularly appreciated by students or faculty. Students complained bitterly about them, and finding faculty to teach them became increasingly difficult. Nevertheless, college-wide, faculty expected high-quality student writing, and where students did not meet a professor's standard, writing instruction from the English department was clearly at fault. As we heard from Chris, this complaint in some form probably dates to the ancient Greeks. Recognizing that writing instruction differed from the assigning of writing, Sheridan decided to initiate a reform designed to, first, take some pressure off the English department, second, spread responsibility for writing instruction to faculty in other departments, and third, mobilize the writing skills of selected senior students to serve as rhetoric assistants to the participating faculty in the program. Those faculty were from departments other than English, which is why assistants seemed like a really good idea. To get the whole works off the ground, Sheridan organized a 2-week Rhetoric Institute in the summer of 1975 for the first set of faculty volunteers who agreed to include writing instruction as well as delivering their usual disciplinary material. Readings for that early faculty workshop included Aristotle's Rhetoric, as well as an exercise in norming grades for student work, which had been collected in advance. Next, faculty writing was subjected to the same treatment, which resulted in an assignment for them, an essay describing their learning about how to teach writing based on what they could expect of students and how their own writing fared upon close examination. The Educational Policy Committee's minutes from February 4th, 1975 include this resolution. You'll hear some familiar current traditional language here, but stay with me. Resolved that at all course levels where appropriate, all members of the Carleton faculty should require term papers and other written work of their students. We do not think it appropriate that at an institution such as Carleton, such written work should be returned to the students with little or no evaluation beyond a letter grade. Therefore, we further resolve that as a matter of policy, written work be returned with detailed commentary by way of evaluation, not only of the accuracy of the content of the paper, but of its form. As part of the evaluation of the effectiveness of written work in all courses, errors of spelling, grammar, and style should be explicitly noted. In order to establish common bases for judging writing skill and providing guidance for improvement, summer rhetoric institutes should be arranged annually to include interested faculty from all disciplines and student rhetoric assistants until it is determined by the dean of the college that they are no longer needed. Although for the present, the object is to increase the options for fulfilling the writing requirement. That's the legislative project. Catch this though, in the long run, the goal is a continuing college-wide involvement in developing all students' writing skills. That last line endorses, I think, for all of us with a WAC background, the same goal. When the program was launched, about half a dozen faculty agreed to design extra writing experiences for a subset of students in designated courses. A student rhetoric assistant worked with each faculty member to facilitate the writing goals of the course for those students attempting to satisfy the graduation requirement through the course. The final decision, separated from the grade in the course, was an up or down decision on the part of the professor. When it comes to sustainability, I guess it's kind of impressive that this system with more changes persisted for about 25 years. Elaine Mayman, who knew Sheridan, notes in her chapter in Fulwiler and Young's wonderful book that Sheridan simultaneously invented the faculty workshop, what we now call WAC, and also fielded the notion of a writing center that could employ peer tutors. She deserves that credit and more. After her departure, the English department continued to provide standalone courses in writing, and the quote, extraterritorial unquote courses expanded beyond the humanities to include introductory courses in the sciences and social sciences. Eventually, though, as Thomas Kuhn might have predicted, the paradigm wore thin. Students learned via the grapevine which professors were likely to award writing requirement and which to avoid. Faculty continued to complain about student writing no matter who was teaching it. So in 1996, a faculty task force examined the problem and produced a report. The report noted that in contrast to the homogeneous student body of 1975, growing diversity among students presented a serious concern with faculty confessing to their own shortcomings when encountering dialect or ESL features in student writing. Writing instruction, never a straightforward matter, now seemed deficient for cultural reasons. Even though not one example of student writing was read and evaluated, the report's recommendations were rather far-reaching. In addition to hiring and supporting qualified ESL staff and expanding the Writing Center, there was the notion of a portfolio system that students would keep with them, adding written material throughout their 4 years. However, the mechanics of collecting and evaluating such an artifact were considered beyond the capacity of the college to manage at that time. Now we come to adaptability. Change arrived in the form of new personnel and new pedagogy. A little biography here. I worked on the Carleton staff for 10 years in a variety of jobs, leaving in the fall of 1992 to pursue a doctorate in English with a Ret Comp emphasis at the University of Minnesota. Chris Anson was directing the program there at that time and was my dissertation director, bless him. In 1997, to my great surprise, I was hired back as an ABD for 1 year, half-time job in faculty development for writing. Well, I had an office, a nice computer, and a door I could close to work on my dissertation when I wasn't working with former colleagues and those who had arrived over the previous 5 years on WAC. I quickly learned that the Sheridan program that featured a subset of students attempting a writing requirement in a range of disciplinary courses was a matter of faculty habit, but not a healthy pedagogy. The 1996 review had surfaced problems but few solutions. One of the problems was that fewer faculty were willing to put in extra effort for the WR students in their courses, and those who were willing often requested specific senior students as writing assistants to reduce their own effort for commentary or conferences to address writing problems. Shortly after I arrived and began to understand faculty worries about writing, Carleton was invited to submit a grant application to a St. Paul-based foundation that had supported us before, most notably for our Learning and Teaching Center back in 1992. 1992 was very early for a small school to have a Learning and Teaching Center. The grant was for faculty development, and my supervisor and associate dean and I decided to improve programming for faculty in WAC. We submitted a preliminary proposal that was deemed interesting by the site visitors, but they complained that we did not include any assessment. So with a gulp, we fearlessly felt our way toward a diktat we really did not completely understand, and we decided to make writing assessment the center of the proposal, launching our sophomore portfolio as a means of faculty development supported by visiting speakers, workshops, conference attendance support, summer funding for revising or creating WAC courses, and reading the portfolios themselves. My boss and I intuitively understood how this kind of assessment would be meaningful and even fun for our colleagues. We suspected that faculty would initially balk at reading student work they had not assigned and was outside their area of expertise. And we hoped that cautiousness would lead to curiosity about how writing could be successful in a variety of forms and disciplinary contexts. We were right. The initial 3-year grant was renewed for a total of 6 years, with a focus on new faculty, as well as anyone else interested, and which of course means a whole lot of buttonholing. One can do a lot of WAC-related damage in over 6 years. Whatever I know about assessment started with doing it. Formal learning through the literature, conferences, and so on came to me later. Remembering that WAC, as introduced at Carleton by Harriet Sheridan, began as a faculty development activity, we were able to add assessment to her insight that writing instruction differs from assigning writing. As the portfolio recipe was adapted over time with ample faculty input, the assessment instrument itself spoke to a shared goal of promoting communication within and among discourse communities. Furthermore, the interdisciplinary design of the portfolio brought that same goal to the attention of students in an unavoidable way. No student could just submit her favorite papers, the ones that all got A's. She had to show breadth of material as well as form. Regarding sustainability, the portfolio assessment began as a pilot in 2004 and continues today, outlasting my tenure as director and prospering under a new director who has ably coped with the challenges of the pandemic by shifting the reading and scoring processes online. Better him than me, but it's working. He deserves all the credit. The faculty development benefits of reading work that first, one has not assigned, and second, ranges beyond one's disciplinary expertise, that benefit still continues. In fact, many faculty are eager to read portfolios because of what they learn from what their colleagues' students write. Many of us will recall Ed White's frequent caution that WAC is subject to cycles that depend on leadership, budget, curricular fads, and so forth. My experience at Carleton and as a consultant to a range of other colleges and universities points me toward a different metaphor. I see WAC as more of a sine curve that fluctuates according to various influences. As a WAC leader, my job is to keep the amplitude up, to anticipate the dips and offer support as needed. As I've worked with many campuses on WAC and assessment, I've learned that size matters. Therefore, I want to briefly address the difference among community colleges, where about half the college level writing courses are taught, universities, where we all earn our credentials, and small liberal arts colleges where WAC often thrives. In case you don't know, and why would you, Carleton is a dinky little place in Northfield, Minnesota, across the river from St. Olaf, as Jesse told us earlier. With about 2,000 students, St. Olaf has over 3,000, and about 280 full and part-time faculty. Small schools like those in Northfield tend to engender fierce loyalty among their alumni, faculty, and staff, although the small school percentage of higher education offerings nationally is around 5% and declining. Small schools foster achievement, promote their graduates, and to a considerable degree populate their boards with plenty of alumni. Details differ from school to school, of course. Until fairly recently, though, as consortia and other combinations have developed to address issues in common, small school administrations were loath to reach out to peers for ideas, data, or other information. Even with an early WAC program, Carleton was no different. A report naming problems in 1996 with student writing did not engender an SOS to any outside institution. Carleton was going to solve its own problem, or wait a while. I will remember a gathering convened by the Teagle Foundation during an AAC&U convention early this century, where grants were being offered by the foundation to small schools but they were required to partner with at least one other institution to address some mutual assessment effort. The group had many questions, and a few administrators showed interest in collaboration with other schools. In a dramatic counter to the Teagle agenda, a dean of a small school in the Northeast categorically denounced the value of combining personnel and data, arguing that sharing data was dangerous to that or any institution's well-being. A hush followed that outburst. Parenthetically, invitations from Teagle and other foundations accomplished good work with partnerships among small schools all over the country. Carleton participated in at least 3 of them. Back to the outburst. To be fair, that dean was speaking out of a moment similar to Harriet Sheridan's approach to tackling the writing curriculum at Carleton in the 1970s. She didn't care about writing at other schools. She did not pick up the phone to ask for advice. She assumed that the Carleton environment was sui generis. Therefore, she proceeded with institutional legislation and a whole lot of arm twisting. From what I've observed as a consultant to about 30 small schools, defensiveness persists in some quarters, yet more faculty administrators seem increasingly open to collaborative ideas that are well supported in the literature and in practice. This is a healthy shift, and it augurs well for WAC overall. As I reviewed the program for this conference, I see a handful of folks from small schools. The virtual format may be the reason there aren't more, and that's understandable. I do hope that virtual access brings in plenty of attendees from small school WAC programs. There's great work going on in all our institutions, and more work to be done. Thanks for these. By the way, when my son was on a track team with deaf students, we learned to cheer this way. Works great on Zoom.
Thanks, Carol. I really appreciate the talk. And it would be nice if we were all in person so we could all be clapping strenuously, maybe standing up. If people would like to ask questions at this point, that would be great. And Carol, if you want to just handle the questions, I think maybe Caleb, you can see in the chat if there's stuff coming in and chime in as well.
Thank you. I would appreciate some help sorting through things. And please, if you have questions for Chris, make a note of them, and his email address is widely available. Be sure and send them directly to him. I could make up stuff, but
I think you could. I think you could.
It wouldn't be as
well. I don't know. You could channel him pretty well, so I'd go for it. So if folks want to unmute, maybe unmute their video, unmute their audio and talk, that would be great. Doug
Okay,
has a
Doug.
question. Yeah.
Doug, would you please unmute and give us your question?
Yeah, thanks, Carol. I really appreciated your comments there about the, insularity and competitiveness of small colleges.
Yeah.
And I just wonder, it goes back to a theme in Chris's talk too, the relationship between WAC as a profession and disciplinary notion versus as like a property of an individual school. I think we're not always great at sharing because, we want to bolster our own status as schools. But could you say a few more things about that, how you see the local interacting with the field and discipline, and have people changed in how they do this?
Well, to go to the last part first, I hope people have changed. Again, I retired in 2017, so I'm not completely au courant, but I had the sense in the 20 years I served as director of Carleton's program that there was galloping change, mostly due to things like the Teagle Foundation and others, the Mellon, the other foundations that small schools depend on. That's where a lot of our funding comes from, and the good ideas that we were infected with have been, I think, easier to spread as a result because they're more familiar. There's not as much jargon. There's more talk about what's good for students and how do we get there. I hear less talk about disciplinary silos because people understand that communication in any form is really important, and a college education ought to provide experience with that. Now, I happen to have worked for a long time at a school that does not have a single speaking course, not one. So it's not like we did everything right by any means, but I do think that what we did with writing, building on a long history, has proven to be a good thing. And when I get a chance to share it, especially with an audience this vast, I'm pretty excited. Kristen, I see your cat. Mine bailed. She was in my lap, but she got bored.
I actually have a question for you, Carol. This is Oscar. I was just thinking, as you and Chris are telling this history, obviously COVID-19 is going to be a part of WAC history and the ways that we've responded to it. I'm just curious, during your time at Carleton or previously, if you can remember a moment or a time that maybe affected your state or the country, something beyond your institution that influenced what you then were doing at your institution in relation to WAC.
Well, this predates WAC, but there was this little dust up in Vietnam when I was in college, and that certainly affected everything, especially if you were male and you were sweating the draft. So I don't know, because I was a student then, but I don't know how those experiences worked into student writing. I do know from some of the courses I took that it came out in many ways, some of it in terms of history, some of it in terms of just raw politics, philosophy. But that was a huge disruption. And we can pray that COVID isn't as bad as that. In fact, as Mike said at the outset, the fact that you can mobilize as quickly as you have, all of you, to teach online when you had to do it, and to produce a conference like this on relatively short notice with changing rules by the minute. I mean, that's simply wasn't going on when I was an undergraduate. So I think, you all deserve to give yourself credit for coping with the current unpleasantness and recognizing that the work goes on. The work is important, and you are important to stick with it. I see a hand from Jennifer Goranian and also from Elaine Mayman. Jennifer?
Hi, I'm new to writing across the curriculum. I'm not new to trying students to write. I had a question. A few years ago, I was teaching in Fishkill Correctional Facility. I was doing anthropology, and then they were being taught writing. And clearly, the men didn't have a good grounding in writing. So teaching them to write vis-a-vis grammar, it just was boring. But having them write essays didn't seem to be teaching them anything because I couldn't get them to understand the basics of putting a sentence together. And when I tried to look for teaching materials, there just was nothing that really met the need. Is that kind of the lacuna you guys are one of the things that you were trying to fill when you talk about teaching writing? Because I did not find good tools. They were either taught creative writing or they were taught grammar, but they weren't really taught expository writing and critical thinking.
Well, I can't answer for the whole profession, but I think Mike.
No, I know.
Mike, what can you say about the WAC Clearinghouse and some of the other resources that would be helpful to Jennifer?
Well,
I didn't have access. Mm-hmm.
I think what Jennifer is talking about is sort of how do you meet people where they're at, and when they're at a level that we're not. Yeah, we're focusing primarily on, say, even elementary or students that are writing on a fairly regular basis, and that might be middle school, it might be high school. Certainly, we focus a lot on college. Yeah. So how do you deal with students who have lower literacy skills?
These are grown men with complex ideas, but without the tools, and I couldn't. It was really hard to find peers to talk to about it, and really hard to. I'm not doing that now, but it just got me very further interested in what you guys are calling the science of writing, because I couldn't look that up anywhere.
Yeah, I think you can look at some of the folks that have worked with prisoners, with folks who are incarcerated. Toby Jacoby, who's my colleague at Colorado State, has started a community literacy center that's been going for a number of years, and they work with these issues pretty clearly. They're doing a lot of work with incarcerated populations. And there's also, I think the Community Literacy Journal also addresses some of these issues. So you might look in that area. I think that might be really helpful.
I couldn't find it when I was doing it years ago. I'll look for it now.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Elaine.
Yes, well, thank you, Carol, and hi to everybody. And many thanks to Mike and all the conference organizers, because this is so important. I see a number of comments in the chat about how important the history is, and it is important. And I just want to say a few more words about Harriet Sheridan.
Oh, thank you.
Because I think she is unsung in many ways as, the true godmother of writing across the curriculum. And Carol, you did a great job of talking about what she did at Carleton, but she did so much else. When she became the dean of the college at Brown University, and I had the privilege of serving as her associate dean of the college during a large part of that period, she really instituted the Writing Fellows program, which was based on the students who were helpers of the extraterritorial faculty, as she called it, at Carleton. But she really pioneered it. And the fact that she was doing this kind of program at Brown, and of course, as we all know, whatever many of us struggle to do at non-Ivy League universities doesn't get nearly the attention that what a place like Brown does. And so I think that her work at Brown with Writing Fellows established that. She also started speaking across the curriculum program. And you mentioned, Carol, that that was something that Carleton hasn't really taken on, but she did that at Brown. And of course, she was the amazing muse and influence of everything we did in the mid-70s at Beaver College, and which is now called Arcadia University. But she was our first workshop leader. She started off with having the faculty at this small liberal arts, lesser known place, reading Plato. and really helping, sending the message that writing was not a superficial skill, that writing was deeply connected, with the ancient Greeks, and we should take it seriously. So I just wanted to make sure that that everybody, and I hope you will continue to write about Harriet, and just make sure that her tremendous influence on everything we do today is noted. In terms of my question, and really for you, Carol, but for everybody, what I'm seeing now is the potential of WAC as, of course, it's essentially a movement of connectivity. That's what it's about. And I think in every phase of my career where WAC has been part of what an institution is doing, it has been a very positive connective force. I think today that it can be a great connective force among institutions. It's something we need right now. I had a laugh at the comment about the small liberal arts person who didn't want to connect. Those are the schools that are going to be gone.
Yeah.
And by the way, Carol, your description of Carleton, I'm sure everybody knows what a great place Carleton is, and what a tremendous reputation it has. And Carleton is certainly going to be one of the liberal arts colleges that are sustained. But in terms of connectivity, one thing I'm very interested in now, and have been all my career really, connections among institutions, especially four-year institutions and two-year institutions. So I just wonder about, is Carleton doing something on that, with that, in terms of connection and outreach to its local community colleges, and just for the group as a whole, just to be thinking along those lines.
That just makes all the sense in the world, Elaine. And I also want to say, it kills me that I never met Harriet Sheridan, but thank you so much for adding to my limited knowledge about her. As far as I know, and again, I've been retired for 4 years, Carleton isn't doing outreach to community colleges. It does a lot of outreach in the community, and not just to educational parts of it. But I think it would be, there's a vocational technical school 10 miles away that could certainly benefit from connections there. And there are, well, probably actually in a perimeter of, or in a radius of 30 miles, there's probably half a dozen such schools. And I think that would be very smart to do that. So if those things are going on at other places that are more on top of it than Carleton is, go for it. It seems like a really smart thing to do. I wish that, your term connectivity really resonates with me, because I think that most of my career, even before I went back to grad school, most of my career was featured just enjoying being with all these interesting people, advancing the mission of an institution that seemed to be doing good things. And I think whatever success I had when I came back from grad school was, first of all, I knew where all the bodies were buried. And secondly, I was willing to be a pest and help people move along with the stuff that we were trying to change, to make better than the system that had persisted for 25 years. That 25 years is a heck of a long time. And it's kind of no surprise that it sort of fell apart. But what is a surprise is that people didn't notice it fell apart. So connectivity, yeah, that's what it's about. And I think I see two more hands. There's Ashley and Marty. So Ashley, go ahead.
Hi, yeah, just first of all, I apologize for not having my camera on. I didn't think I was gonna be able to attend the conference today, but I'm also new to, I guess, WAC. I just got my master's degree straight after undergrad. I just got it in May, earned it.
Congratulations.
Thank you, yeah. So a lot of my research focused on writing center studies. And although we used to have writing programs in our, literally physically in our writing center, they got moved to a different I guess, a different part of the campus. So I wasn't as in tune to writing programs and writing across the curriculum and curriculum, or I guess just like the programming the first year, second year, third year, and all that upper division writing intensive. So one thing that I've kind of gotten a little bit out of touch with, and one thing I have a question that I would like to ask, professionals who've been doing this, is how the central or like how the local demographics have factored into writing across the curriculum, as far as, because I know I worked at and got my degree at Azusa Pacific University, and we talked about, I guess, focusing on it was a Hispanic serving institution. So we talked about how do we focus on, the socioeconomic status of the local students that are expecting or going to be enrolling in the college. And yeah, so I'm just wondering how local demographics factors into, or how you've seen it factor into over time, the writing curriculum and programming.
Well, I've been to a lot of places where the student body was primarily local, and that their material conditions, of course, were important for the students and also for the institutions, because many of them were either public institutions, or if they were private, they had very small endowments and their resources were limited. And nothing can be more important than understanding who you're trying to teach, which is what Jennifer was getting at when she talked about her prison teaching experience. So I think that the people in front of you in your classroom really do have an outsized influence on what you present. And to give a really bizarre example, my current job is a very part-time job. I am the executive director of the Cannon Valley Elder Collegium, which is a small nonprofit that produces liberal arts courses for seniors. And I had my first chance to teach that population and to teach on Zoom just last spring. And it made a huge difference that the fact people that were in the class were not just Northfielders, but Northfield is kind of a magnet for retirees, especially those oldies. Palmquist, you're going to be back, and you're going to be in good company. They come back, and most of them are well educated, but not everyone is. And people have very different experiences. And it's been just a joy to engage with the variety of people. I had people in my class. I was probably the youngest people in my class. Can you imagine me? I'm ancient. But there were people well into their 80s who were keeping up and pushing me and taking note of what their classmates were saying. And it was absolutely fabulous. Now, on the undergraduate level, these same things go on. But again, the local environment has to be an influence. If people don't have enough to eat, if people are worried about childcare, if people are trying to do school and a job and take care of their families, that can't help but influence the work they're able to do. And the approaches this institution needs to keep in mind to reach them. So I'm sure that's a vastly insufficient answer, but I think you're on a good track.
No, I appreciate it a lot. Thank you. It does give some insight into how we should be changing and how we are changing and how to respond to those around us. So yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Hi, Marty.
Hi, Carol. Thanks for that wonderful opening talk.
Thank you.
My question concerns the degree to which the feminization of composition, which Susan Miller and others made us all very aware of, has bled over into writing across the curriculum. Is there a degree to which WAC is affected by a feminization of our discipline the way composition studies was and still is, I guess?
Boy, I'm trying to figure out how.
And I know that's not what you talked about, and that's completely out of the blue.
No, that's all right. I mean, I'm trying to think about places I've visited and who was there. when we were talking about WAC. I don't know if Mike can put his fingers on any kind of data that talks about WAC personnel and how they sort according to age, gender, or whatever. But I guess I would have to hazard a guess that maybe some more women than men have shown up for workshops and things. But I don't know what happens to that. I mean, one of the things we want to accomplish with a workshop, of course, is to make the people in the room infectious, right? We want them to send their version of COVID out to their departments and their other colleagues and do damage, as I said earlier. It's important to be sure that people are representative of what's going on at a school in terms of what you offer them and how you hope they're going to use it. But I tend to trust that the people that get this stuff are pushy enough to engage others, despite whatever barriers might be there. And again, you're all in departments, you know that the first person you glom onto for WAC is the new guy, right? You want to make sure that new kid knows the program and what's going to be, what the resources are and what are the rewards. I remember being in a job interview one time where I was asked, why should this college do WAC? And I said, well, you should do WAC because it'll make your experience of student work and student relationships better. But there's a lot of work to it. So if you don't want to do the work, don't do WAC. The woman's face fell, which I guess is understandable. But again, I think we do count on just the basics like course goals and assignment design and revision and all those basics that not every person comes to a teaching position with those particular features in their teaching repertoire. And the more we can just spread out those basics, the better students are off and the better the institution is off. So I don't know about the gender break. I can't tell you. But somebody flashed Elizabeth, did you say you had a source on that? Elizabeth Wardle?
Yeah, I just mentioned that Caitlin, one of my students who just graduated, did some surveys on this, but she said she'll be presenting on it tomorrow in E2 if anyone's interested.
Okay, you heard it here, E2 tomorrow. Thank you.
I'll add something as well that might complicate that question a little bit, especially at larger universities with large numbers of faculty and contingent positions. WAC is a really interesting issue, and I think that it's also the case in teaching institutions that have heavy course loads, particularly like some of the community colleges where people might be teaching 4, 5, even 6 courses in a given term. When you ask people in these other disciplines or invite people in the other disciplines to get involved in writing across the curriculum, it's a huge load to add to their work. And when we see people in these contingent positions and they're being paid less, they certainly don't have the same security as tenure line faculty, asking them to bring on this kind of, or to do this extra work is very challenging. And we have to find ways to either change the reward structures or find ways to support the faculty who want to engage in writing across the curriculum with a focus on learning and preparing students to enter their professions and disciplines or to participate in society. So I think we really want to be thoughtful about the way we look at this, because there are so many complicating factors, especially in terms of labor issues and equity. And certainly when you cross the idea of the feminization of the field, say of writing studies, you're looking at a large number of adjunct faculty members, contingent faculty members in our field that are heavily female. And so it really gets complicated and interesting. I would think that people like Elaine might have some insights on that. But in any event.
Well, thanks, Mike. And you reminded me, I don't think I said that I was an adjunct the whole time I taught at Carleton.
They were lucky to have you.
Well, thank you. I had a good time. But I really advocated when a search was going on for a successor to make that a tenure track line to no avail. So, there's one of the things again about small schools is any kind of status change is really hard to come by. Okay, what else? Marty, do you still have a hand up, or are you?
No, I don't. It just didn't. It didn't go away.
So if there are other questions, now would be a great time to step in and ask them.
Yeah, and that goes for critique too. What did I get wrong? I don't think you can say much about critique in terms of Chris's presentation, because he did such a fabulous job of unspooling, a really important history. But I see Jen has a flag up.
Yeah, I always wonder about extra or non-curricular forces and resources on our campus, and what it means to us to work with them. And I feel like it's a really dangerous thing to wonder. When I started off being interested in that in our field, it felt very student-centered, and what can we learn from students where they go that we don't get to go, and that was what piqued my interest. And now, as I see streamlining and centralizing forces on campus and ways in which faculty are excluded from doing what I think are important things with students, I feel like my own interest and question is dangerous, but I'm still going to ask it. What are the best WAC forces on our campuses that we can or should be connecting to that might not involve us, that might bubble up from student groups or things that students do in our local communities, and things that are part of their writing educations that we sometimes do and maybe don't always know how to even learn about?
Well, I think that's a really good-hearted question. I will say that in the waning years of my career, I tried very hard to establish sort of a co-curricular WAC feature at Carleton. And the dean wasn't interested. So that died on the vine. But I had the arguments already, and they were similar to what you're saying. So I think that the kinds of things we know how to do could be more diversified, and they could involve sports. They could involve other extracurriculars like music and theater and art and so on. They're already, wackish in their institutional manifestations, and I just think more of that stuff needs to be drawn on, and give the institution the chance to take credit for that and to support it.
So,
oh, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Carol.
No, that's okay. Jeff had a hand up, but you go first.
Well, no, I was going to say that we maybe have time for one more question, because you've really been answering a lot, and it'd be good to kind of wrap things up, but maybe one or two more questions, and then we can end this plenary.
Well, this is very good information. Thank you, Mike.
Oh, just a thought.
Jeff, are you still feeling?
I just was clapping. Thank you, though. Thank you for your presentation. I didn't have a question.
Okay.
Thanks, Jeff. If there's anyone else who would like to ask a question at this point, please do so. I'll wait a few seconds.
Hear the guillotine coming down?
No, really, Carol, I really appreciate the talk that you gave, and certainly appreciate Chris doing this. And I don't think we told everybody Chris had an engagement that he really could not miss. And it came up last minute, and it was really unfortunate that he couldn't be here. I wish he could have been here, because of course he's brilliant, as we all know, just like you are. I think I think that's a great idea from Dan Emery. We should unmute and applaud the work that you've done, and then we can wrap up. So please, everybody unmute and let's have a little bit of clapping.
This is a good team to be on. I'm very, very pleased that Mike persuaded me to do this. And I wish, like Mike, I wish we were all in Colorado Springs together. Not Colorado Springs, that other place.
Yeah,
Fort Collins.
we're a little bit north of there, but hey.
Well, you know,
They
Colorado Springs is one of the places I've visited. I haven't been to your campus.
They have beautiful mountains down there. It's really cool.
Mhm.
So anyway, thank you all very much. Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Chris and Abstentia. Thanks for all the great questions and the good conversation. We'll have the next session will be starting at the top of the hour. And so if you're a speaker, please show up about 10, 15 minutes early so we can make you a co-host and allow you to share your screens. And thank you all so much. Thanks to everybody for being here. We had a great turnout for our opening plenary, and looking forward to 2 more great ones as well. Thank you, everybody.
Adios.